Story 1. Am I the booty hole for insisting my permanent sister switch bedrooms with me? My sister and I, both mid-20s, female, I'm a few years older, share a house together. It was our parents' house, and we both inherited it after they died. We have equal share ownership of the house. The house has 4 bedrooms. One is the master room and has an ensuite and walk-in wardrobe. The other 3 just have built-in robes. When we both moved back in after deciding that neither of us wanted to sell, we agreed that she could have the master suite, but the 2 largest of the other bedrooms would both be mine. One as an actual bedroom and the other as a gaming room for me. The last and smallest bedroom is a guest room. Her boyfriend has been living here for a while, and she recently told me that she's pregnant. I'm not particularly looking forward to sharing a house with a screaming baby, but it's her house too, and she has every right to be here and raise her kid. Obviously, the baby will need a bedroom, and I was expecting that to be the guest room. It is the smallest bedroom in the house, but it's still the same size as a standard bedroom. But my sister wouldn't go for that. She's insisting I move my stuff out of my games room so that can be the baby's room. I told her that I'm not moving my stuff into the guest room because that wasn't our agreement. But then she informed me that actually I won't be able to do that either, as we would still need a guest room, especially with the baby coming, as her boyfriend's family will want to visit. So I said, fine, you can have my games room if you move into my room and give me the master room. She started crying and said that, as a mother, she's going to need her own space, and she deserves the master bedroom. I asked what she expected me to do, and she said I should just suck it up and keep all my crap in my own room. We are at an impasse, and I can't get her to come to a real agreement with me. She keeps calling me a huge witch and says that I should let her have both the master bedroom and my gaming room because she needs them more. Her boyfriend says I should just deal with it, that because I don't want kids anyway, I should just suck it up. My girlfriend, who also spends a lot of time here, is on my side and says my sister is being a spoiled, entitled little brat. Am I the a-hole? Edit. She can't buy me out. She doesn't have the money. We each got some money along with the house, but she wanted a fancy Range Rover, so most of hers went to that, and she can't get a loan because she's only working part-time at Macca's at the moment. I still have all of my money, plus some of my own savings, so I will be having a discussion with her about buying her out. The house is located in a nice, expensive area, so what she gets from me for her half will be enough for her to buy an average 3-bedroom house in a cheaper area. Really don't want to sell if I can help it, as the house has been in the family a long time. My verdict is that this person, at least the way it's written and only hearing one side of the story, is not the a-hole. I think it's a hard situation to be in, that's for sure. They probably knew it was going to be hard entering when they were sharing a house together. Lives don't just stay consistent for your whole life until you die. They probably knew there was going to be some life events with, births in the family, divorces a possibility, significant others in general. So they had to have foreseen this. The fact that it comes up now and the brother, I'm assuming it's a brother, the one with the games room. It's not nice to be asked to give up your possessions or your space, but they're at least willing to compromise. They've offered multiple solutions, switching the master bedroom, trying to find something that's more equal and fair, even offering to have her buy him out, or I'm getting that backwards, to have him buy her out with enough money left from the sale that she could then move into a place of her own, which actually is probably ideal for someone who's starting a new family and has stated as much that she wants the privacy as a new mother. I think that's probably the most optimal solution. Then the house stays in the family. The sister rather, can still come over and see the house if it has sentimental value from the mother. And then the new mother gets her own space with her own new family, and the brother gets all of his space and keeps his games intact and all that. I think he's offering really good compromises, and the pregnant sister is just not having any of it. So I think, yes, she's being entitled, and the OP is not the booty hole in this case. Story 2. I got back at childhood bullies by destroying an entire town. Pardon for my English, as it isn't my first language. I was browsing r/Ask Reddit and came across a thread about whatever happened to that trenchcoat kid at your school. I was that trenchcoat kid, and I came back to town and destroyed it years ago. As a background, I grew up in a conservative little town in a conservative rural area heavily dominated by religion. This makes people put great stock on moral purity and appearances. Keeping up the facade is the most important thing. Everyone must go to church weekly, and people are heavily judged for appearing sinful. This was a bad thing for me, as the cards were heavily stacked against me from birth. You see, I'm a baby of assaults. My mother lost her parents when she was young and was taken in by her uncle and aunt. The uncle had an important position in the local religious hierarchy, so when he and a couple of his friends started abusing my mom, it was ignored by everyone. When she got pregnant, it was painted as showing that she's a harlot running around seducing married men. She was cast out. Why she didn't move out of town, I don't know. But yeah, there I came into the picture, born out of wedlock and with no father, branded as a sinful outcast. My childhood was crap. I won't go into details, but enough to say that by the time I started going to school, I was quite damaged. School made it worse. I was bullied relentlessly. Teachers were part of it, since they were all part of the religious community, which saw me as stained. Imagine being the only black kid in a town run by KKK, and you get close to how it was. So yeah, in school I became that trenchcoat kid, or its local cultural equivalent. I became weird and hostile on purpose to turn people off. People were casting me into the mold of being damaged and stained, so yeah, I took it and turned it into something to protect myself with. Despite all this opposition, I managed to graduate with decent grades. A distant aunt, my only decent relative, helped me get into a college in an actual city. She was the black sheep of the family and saw herself in me, maybe? Around this time, my mother drank herself to death. Can't blame her for it. She had a life insurance policy that helped me study. City life liberated me. I went into therapy and managed to treat the wounds that town had sliced into me. I got rid of that crappy town, but I guess some part of it never left me. Years went by. I became a sort of analytical consultant. I work for an international company that does sort of out-of-the-box analysis for other companies. I won't go into details to protect my identity, but we assist in solving all kinds of situations. Well, in my line of work, I'm sometimes called in to help downsizing operations. This sucks. I feel for the people who get fired, but if I wouldn't do it, someone else would. A couple of years ago, I got an assignment to go into 3 different factories and assess them wholesale, then come with a suggestion on which of them to move abroad. My hometown was among those 3 factories. You see, the crappy town I grew up in was one of those one smokestack towns, like we say in my country. There was one factory and some agriculture. Everyone worked in those jobs, like 60% of the people in the factory. Rest of the economy rolled around supporting the factory and the people working there. Most of the people were looking forward to nothing but a job at the factory after getting out of school. The religious community running the town ran the factory as well. The big shots in the community tended to be bosses in the factory. This meant that the factory wasn't run that well. Promotions were based on holiness, not on merit or skill. The trip back to my hometown was glorious. Most people didn't recognize me at first. The chubby outcast had become outwards just another corporate drone. I inspected all the paperwork, listened to all their speeches and lies, and audited the processes. In the process, I dropped hints, and finally, they got who I was. The factory people threw a party for me then, for the old time's sake. Many of my old school buddies were there. We remembered fake good times together. I threw shadow on every part by pulling up some certain event of bullying I had endured, just to see the atmosphere turn awkward. Then I laughed at it like it was always a joke, and I had grown out of it. Inside, I was seething with hatred and enjoying this all. I really loved seeing their faces, seeing what they had become, because screw it, I was going to take it all away from them. In the end, they seemed relieved, believing that they were lucky it was me doing the audit, that the hometown boy would protect them. After my visit, lasting a couple of days, was over, I cruised around the town in my rented car just to see how the people lived and to remember what it was like. My state of mind was something close to arousal. I had never understood why people pursue positions of power, but yeah, now I understand. The rest is, as they say, history. I wrote a really scathing report documenting every little flaw and mistake ever done in the town plant. I didn't need to lie or fabricate. I simply took things that existed and polished them till they looked even worse than they were. The factory was shut down, and in the following 3 years, the town died. No business venture ever came to replace it. Drug use and alcohol use spiked, as did crime and domestic violence. Lives fell apart. Families fell apart. They still haven't recovered, save for a few brighter souls who moved away. I still stalk them on social media sometimes, enjoying how crappy their lives are, how they all finally got to pay for what they did to me and my mom. I don't feel a slight bit of remorse. If I could do it all again, I would. Only I'd first make it so I could be present to watch when they received the news about the factory being shut down. Hell, in my fantasy version of the events, I'd stay in town for a year just to see everyone fall apart. In reality, I will only go back there once, when my uncle finally dies. I'm going to go and pee on his grave. Dang, that is one diabolical dude. I mean, he admitted at the end, well, throughout pretty much, to taking great pleasure in destroying the city, which doesn't say what the population was, but I imagine there were a lot of people who suffered the consequences that probably had no idea who this guy was. Now, granted, the factory probably would have shut down regardless of the audit that this one individual did. If the factory truly was not performing to the standards of the other factories in the running to be shut down, then yeah, this probably would have happened independently of OP's input. But still, the fact that he took pleasure in it, I think that says a lot about him. But at the same time, I mean, if it's a whole city full of these religious nut jobs, I mean, I have a hard time feeling too bad for them, especially when there's these religions that supposedly preach acceptance of everybody and understanding all the quandaries of morality, and yet they just breed such hatred for these very specific instances. In this case, the fact that he was born out of wedlock. So, yeah, very hypocritical. Maybe some people got what they deserved, and, you know, karma, what goes up, what must come down. But, I mean, one life versus a whole city's life, hard to compare. Definitely not apples to apples. There's just a lot of evil people involved in this story altogether. So, tough to say where the ethics lie, but I guess c'est la vie. Story 3. I'm 29 female, parents ghosted me 5 years ago after my wedding and now reached out. What should I do? Too long didn't read. I'm married to my former boss. Parents did not take the marriage as well as I'd hoped and ignored me for 5 years, only to reach out when they saw a 5th anniversary Facebook post that mentioned our kids. Do I let them back in or do I ignore them? My husband, 30-year-old male, used to be my boss. About 9 years ago, I started working as his assistant. We spent about 2.5 years ignoring our mutual attraction until we gave in. We then went to HR, who reassigned me, and the whole thing was strictly above board from the time we began dating. I got pregnant about a year later, and my husband and I decided to just get married. While we'd only really been dating for about a year and a half, we knew each other completely, loved each other, lived together, and there was a baby on the way. We knew how it would look, but I had to leave the company anyway due to problems with my new boss, so we didn't anticipate this causing any issues, except with my parents. They, 62 male and 57 female, have always been overprotective, so I knew they wouldn't like me dating my boss, and I hadn't told them. but I had to tell them if I wanted them at my wedding. We decided to mostly be honest with them about how it was strictly professional until it wasn't, how the second it got unprofessional, we went to HR, how he had never taken advantage of me, but now we wanted to get married and we wanted them there. We did not mention the baby, because I felt that giving them that information in addition to the rest all at once would just break them. I was only about 4 months along when the wedding happened, so the bump was easily hidden by a flowy dress. The wedding itself went off without a hitch, and apart from my mother pulling me into the bathroom shortly before the ceremony to ask if I was sure about this, which I said I was, my parents seemed to take it well. The ceremony and reception were at 2 different venues, and we had to travel from one to the other, and my parents never arrived at the reception. I called them and got ignored. And then my brother called them, and they told him that they were going home. I don't remember the exact reason they gave, but it amounted to them being tired and uncomfortable. I tried contacting them after the wedding, but found that I was blocked on everything except email, which I used to send them a long letter, essentially saying that I'm an adult who made an adult choice, and I hope they can respect that. 5 years later, I have not heard from my parents since my wedding. My husband and I are not big on social media in general, but I recently posted something for our 5th anniversary in which I mentioned our 2 kids and 3rd on the way. Within a month of making this post, my parents left a voicemail saying they saw the post and, having had no idea that they had grandchildren previously, now want to meet them. I haven't responded, and there have been a few follow-ups since then asking why I haven't. I don't know what to do, but my gut instinct is that 5 years is too long, and it's about the kids, not about them respecting my choices or relationship. However, I can't help but feel that I'm being unfair, and my brother agrees, because I told them in my email that if they could learn to respect my choice and my marriage eventually, then we could talk. And now I'm retroactively applying a time limit. Edit. Can't find a way to work this in organically, but my husband is not white. I am, as are my parents. I don't think this is a race thing or that my parents are racist, and neither is my husband, but we don't understand why they would want to meet our mixed-race children if they were racist, and this element is still gnawing at me. Should I reach out to them? If I did, how would we go about rebuilding the relationship? Update, October 22nd, 2021. Too long didn't read. They're racists. I asked to talk yesterday. We were on Zoom within an hour. It was my parents and me and my husband. They asked to see the kids, and I said they could see them eventually, depending on them earning our trust and convincing us they were going to be positive additions to the kids' lives. They asked to start by reading me a letter that they claimed to have written on my wedding day. It said that they were uncomfortable with me marrying my former boss, as they thought he took advantage of me. So they left between the wedding and reception to avoid a scene. But they wanted me to know they were here for me, despite their issues with him. They added that they would have sent this to me the morning after my wedding, but then I sent my email about them needing to respect my choices, and they were so ashamed they couldn't bring themselves to send theirs. Seeing my anniversary post made them realize how much they've missed in 5 years, and they really don't want to miss any more. I had some questions, like what the big deal was with me marrying my former boss, and they said that it just wasn't what they had in mind for my wedding day and my future spouse. I asked why they even came to the wedding at all if they didn't support the marriage, and my dad responded that he wanted to walk his daughter down the aisle, as it was the only chance he'd ever get. The way it was phrased implied that they had intentionally only come to the wedding so he could give me away, and always planned to leave halfway. And because he said my daughter and didn't talk to me directly, it was pretty clear he was thinking about my older sister, who passed away. My husband caught that too, and said that if they were talking about me, they should address me directly. Then added that if they had planned to leave, they should have told us, as we wouldn't have invited them. And the fact they waited 5 years to reach out was going to take more reasons than shame, as a father, he didn't understand how they could ignore their daughter for 5 years, or only get back in touch when we had kids. My dad snapped that he wasn't going to take this, and said a slur which meant dark-skinned. My mother immediately tried to run damage control, but I ended the call. They have since messaged me several times trying to explain that calling my husband a racial slur wasn't indicative of a racist attitude, and he wouldn't have said that in front of the kids, so they should still get to meet them. I've spent 5 years wondering how they were so offended by me marrying my boss that it earned no contact for half a decade. Turns out they're just racist. It's almost nice to find out. If it was just the boss thing, I would have sympathy for them, and we might even be able to reconcile. But with this, it's now just a question of if I'm going to knowingly expose my mixed-race children to a couple of racists, which I am obviously not going to do. For this one, I really wish I had more context on the history of the relationship between the parents and the daughter. Because if they had a seemingly regular relationship prior to the wedding, and then all of a sudden it was just cold turkey, no contact for 5 whole years, it seems like on both sides they kind of jumped the gun and went straight to assuming that the other person was just horrible, even before they learned about the aspect of racism. Am I right to assume that they didn't text, they didn't call, they didn't see each other for holidays? That just seems crazy that nothing would come up for 5 whole years and they would just happily go along holding this grudge over something that, before the racist part came into play, seemingly isn't that bad. I mean, marrying someone that you love, regardless of their, working relationship with you, I think that's not worth 5 years of no contact with your offspring. But all that aside, the advice that she's asking for, what should she do about the relationship between her kids and her parents? That's a tough one because there's absolutely no way that I can see it for the grandparents to have a relationship with the grandkids without also having a relationship with the parents. There's a lot that's involved with in-laws and the biological parents of the daughter in this case. If they're going to be involved with the grandkids, they're going to be, face to face with the parents. That you got to have FaceTime. There's going to be handoffs for babysitting. So it's either all or nothing. There's no in between. I don't know how you would broker that. And I think if they've lived a happy life for 5 years without the grandparents, which again is just hard for me to imagine that they could go 5 years and just, I'm happy that I haven't heard from my parents in 5 years. Wonder what that's all about. If they've made it 5 years and they've got their life with their new family pretty established,